The greatest pain is not the absence of hope, but the moment a newly kindled spark, one that has just begun to warm the soul, is ruthlessly doused by a bucket of cold water. The previous episode closed with Tien's tears of profound disappointment rolling down her cheeks. The appearance of Grandma Depp and her guide, who had traveled all the way from distant Chaobang to the farm, felt like an absolute miracle. The uncanny resemblance of the mole on the back of the neck had sent both Tien and Jack's hearts hammering wildly against their ribs. However, life is inherently a series of cruel ironies. The birthmark on the leg, the sole remaining proof of the elderly woman and Apo's lineage, was something Tien did not possess. Watching the silhouette of the long-distance coach vanish into the sunset after seeing the guests off, Tien stood dazed on the porch, feeling an utter, abysmal emptiness in her heart. She realized that, once again, fate had played a cruel joke on her. That night, the farm was enveloped in a deathly silence. There was only the whistling of the wind through the leaves and the anguished cries of a little parrot in the corner of the porch. Tien sat with her knees hugged to her chest on the small bamboo bed, staring blankly into the void. She did not cry aloud, but her silence carried a staggering, crushing weight. Jack walked into the room, holding a warm towel and a glass of hot milk. He quietly sat down beside her, gently draping the towel over her shoulders, which were trembling slightly from the chilly night mist. He offered no empty cliches, for he knew that any words of comfort would be utterly powerless against the smoldering ache of losing her family that had burned silently within her for the past 20 years. End quote. Jack, end quote. Tien spoke softly, her voice raspy and strained. End quote. I'm used to being abandoned, but I've never gotten used to the crushing disappointment after being given hope. Seeing that elderly woman painstakingly searching for her grandchild makes me wonder. Somewhere in this world, did my biological parents ever frantically look for me like that? Or have they completely forgotten that this daughter even exists? End quote. Jack heard her question, and his heart wrenched with a sharp pang, as if 1,000 knives were piercing his chest. He turned her around, gripping her upper arms firmly, and looked directly into her tear-filled, glistening eyes with the utmost conviction. End quote. Tien, listen to me. Your parents definitely never forgot you. No mother or father in this world could ever forget their own flesh and blood. It's just that the timing between you and them hasn't opposed aligned yet. This world is simply too vast, and we are far too small. If they can't find you, then I swear, I will be the one to turn this earth upside down with you to find them. End quote. Jack's resolute vow acted like a stream of warm water, winding through Tien's frozen soul. She rested her head against his chest, seeking a fleeting moment of warmth and peace. Yet in that very fated moment, Tien suddenly remembered something. She looked up, her eyes widening. End quote. Jack, do you remember that old wooden chest from the orphanage that I always carried with me? Since the day we started this farm, I've never dared to open it out of fear that the painful old memories would come rushing back. But inside, there are a few tattered clothes and toys I gathered from my days of wandering. Who knows, maybe there's something in there. End quote. Without a second in Oppo's hesitation, Jack immediately led Tien into the storage room at the back of the house. The weathered old wooden chest, its outer paint peeling off in large flakes, lay silently beneath the corner of a wardrobe like a witness to time. Jack carefully used a screwdriver to pry open the long rusted latch. As the lid lifted, the musty odor of old paper and rotting fabric wafted out strongly. Inside lay only a frayed red sweater, a cloth doll torn at the shoulder, and a few certificates of admission for stray children from the orphanage years ago. Tien let out a heavy sigh of disappointment and was about to close the lid. But the sharp eye of a structural engineer like Jack caught her hand. He noticed that the bottom of the wooden chest was unusually thick and the wood grain appeared inconsistent. Jack told Tien to step back as he skillfully slipped a small knife blade into the gap between the bottom planks. A faint click echoed as the flimsy plywood at the bottom popped up, revealing a small, concealed compartment underneath. Inside the secret space was a flat object, tightly stuck to the wood grain due to years of moisture. Using a pair of small tweezers, Jack patiently and meticulously separated the object to avoid tearing it apart. It was a small, yellowed color photograph, heavily modeled with large foxing spots from the passage of time. Under the bright beam of the flashlight, the image that emerged made them both catch their breath. It was a photograph of an educated, young couple, elegantly dressed in the style of bygone decades. The wife was cradling a baby girl of about 2 or 3 years old, who had round, mischievous eyes. Most remarkably, the detail that made Tien's heart skip a beat was a finely handcrafted silver bracelet on the little girl and Appo's tiny wrist, faintly engraved with 2 capital letters, and quote, TT, and quote, Tien and Appo's, TT and Appo's, could stand for Tien. This is your family, and quote, Jack exclaimed, his voice cracking with astonishment and excitement. The old photograph instantly became the key to unlocking a door to the past that had long been shut. However, the picture was far too old. The mottled stains obscured most of the facial features of the young couple, making identification by the naked eye completely impossible. Seeing Tien holding the photo with trembling hands, Jack understood that if he hastily posted this on social media, or if he planted a massive seed of hope in her heart only to yield an empty result, Tien's spirit would utterly collapse. Therefore, Jack made a momentous decision. He would keep this entirely hidden from Tien. He would walk this path alone, silently enduring all hardships and disappointments. Only when he uncovered the absolute, 100% truth would he tell her. He wanted to be her shield against all the hurts of life. The next day, Jack brought the photograph to his construction site office. Leveraging all his technological skills, he stayed up for several consecutive nights at his computer, using advanced image restoration software to digitally scan, demold, rebalance the lighting, and reconstruct every facial line of the couple in the photo. Once the image was restored to maximum clarity, Jack began his search. He chose not to post it publicly on mainstream social media platforms, fearing it would alert malicious individuals or attract misleading fake information. Instead, Jack discreetly sent the photo to a few close, influential contacts within his construction and real estate networks to inquire about the identity of the elegant couple. Among those Jack reached out to was Mr. Lamb, a veteran architect and a senior strategic partner in the foundation pouring project that Jack was managing. Mr. Lamb was a man of great learning and talent, possessing a vast network stretching from south to north, and a profound understanding of the world. When he saw the restored photograph Jack presented during a technical meeting, Mr. Lamb suddenly froze. The reading glasses in his hand clattered onto the blueprint table. Within an instant, the old architect and Appo's face turned deathly pale. His lips trembled, and his eyes betrayed stark bewilderment mingled with fear. And quote, Jack, tell me, where did you get this photo? The child wearing this silver bracelet. Where is she now? End quote. Mr. Lamb gripped Jack's shoulders, his voice filled with an unprecedented urgency. Jack was startled by the intensely volatile reaction from his usually composed mentor. He looked around to ensure no one was paying attention, then lowered his voice to explain that this was a keepsake belonging to a very close friend of his, who had been separated from her family since she was 6 years old. Upon hearing this, Mr. Lamb staggered back into his chair. He massaged his temples and let out a deeply melancholy sigh. And quote, it cannot be mistaken. No matter how much time has ravaged his features, I would still recognize the man in this photo. That is Tien, my closest childhood friend. Many years ago, Tien had an incredibly happy family, but then tragedy struck, and he and his wife lost their only daughter on a fateful train heading south. After that horrific ordeal, Tien's wife fell gravely ill from sheer heartbreak and passed away. Left completely devastated, Tien sold off all his houses and assets in the city, leaving wealth and luxury behind to wander everywhere in search of his child. I heard that after years of fruitless searching, he fell into despair, retreated to a remote countryside, and lived in seclusion as a potter to punish himself. End quote. Hearing this, Jack's chest heaved with dramatic tension. Every single piece of the puzzle seemed to be fitting together with terrifying perfection. The silver bracelet engraved with, end quote, End quote. The train heading south, the father working as a potter. He hastily asked, end quote, Uncle Lamb, so where's Uncle Tien now? Is there any way you can contact him? End quote. Mr. Lamb shook his head, his eyes clouded with sadness. End quote. I have completely lost touch with Tien for over a decade. He deliberately severed ties with his old world. However, I know a few people in the traditional pottery village associations in the neighboring provinces. Let me make some inquiries for you. But this will take a lot of time, and it will require funds to track down someone living in seclusion. End quote. Without a shred of hesitation, Jack immediately pulled a bank card from his pocket and pushed it toward Mr. Lamb. It held the entirety of his savings from recent major projects, a substantial sum of money. Jack looked at Mr. Lamb imploringly. End quote. Uncle Lamb, this is all the money I have right now. I beg of you to use every connection and hire the best detectives to find Uncle Tien's whereabouts. But I have one request. Please keep this an absolute secret. Do not let my girlfriend know. I'm afraid. I'm truly afraid of her having hope only to be met with disappointment again. I will bear that pain in her stead. End quote. Moved by the young man in Apo's profound sincerity and silent sacrifice for his lover, Mr. Lamb nodded and accepted the task. Throughout the following weeks, Jack lived in a state of extreme tension. By day, he had to act completely normal in front of Tien, still going out to the fields with her, tending to the farm and the little parrot, and wearing a gentle smile so she wouldn't suspect a thing. But when night fell and Tien had drifted into a deep sleep from exhaustion, Jack would sneak out to the porch, dialing Mr. Lamb's number to get updates. There were times when clues hit dead ends, and times when detectives reported false leads, making the large sums of money spent feel like a drop in the ocean. Yet Jack never once thought of giving up. Only one thought occupied his mind. He had to restore Tien's family to her, and bring a smile of true happiness back to her lips. Nearly 2 grueling months passed. Just as their efforts seemed to hit a wall of hopelessness, a fateful turning point arrived on a scorching day in June. While Jack was supervising the crew pouring the very first batches of concrete for the project and Apo's foundation, the phone in his pocket vibrated relentlessly. It was a call from Mr. Lamb. Jack hurriedly ran to a secluded corner, the roar of the engines on the construction site still echoing loudly. He pressed answer. End quote. Hello, Uncle Lamb. What's the matter? End quote. On the other end of the line, Mr. Lamb's voice lacked its usual solemn composure. Instead, it trembled with an excitement so intense that his voice cracked, and he panted as if he had just run a long distance. End quote. Jack. Good news. Monumental news, my boy. We found Tien. My detectives have verified his exact current residence. Tien is living in seclusion in an ancient pottery village by the river in the neighboring province. Every piece of information, physical description, and past history perfectly matches the man in your photograph. We have found Tien's father. End quote. The phone in Jack's hand nearly slipped to the ground. His ears rang, and the space around him seemed to stop moving. All the exhaustion, the sleepless nights, and the anxieties that had weighed heavily on his shoulders over the past months suddenly vanished like soap bubbles. He had done it. He had found the greatest missing link in the life of the woman he loved. A wave of indescribable joy surged within Jack. He wanted to shout at the top of his lungs for the whole world to hear, but then he paused. How was he going to tell Tien? Should he take her there right away, or prepare her mentally first? The caution of a mature man kept him grounded. That evening, Jack drove back to the farm in a state of mind that was both ecstatic and anxious. Walking into the yard, he saw Tien standing by the porch cutting grass for the parrot, a gentle, peaceful melody still humming on her lips. Looking at that serene scene, Jack took a deep breath. He decided that tonight would be the moment he revealed the entire truth. He could no longer hide it from her, for she had the right to know and the right to hope. After finishing a simple dinner, Jack cleared the dishes, took Tien by the hand, and led her to the wooden bench in the yard where they often sat to stargaze. The moonlight tonight was exceptionally bright, illuminating Tien's delicate yet slightly weathered face. Jack sat opposite her, cradling her small hands within his own. He could feel her hands trembling slightly, an instinctual reaction to the unusually serious atmosphere. End quote. Tien, end quote. Jack began, his voice dropping into a register of absolute sincerity, end quote. Over the past few months, I've kept something very big from you. I know you might be angry, but please hear me out, end quote. Tien looked at her lover in bewilderment, her round eyes reflecting clear anxiety, end quote. What's wrong, Jack? You're scaring me. Is there an issue with the work at the construction site? End quote. Jack shook his head. He pulled the clearly restored old photograph from his jacket pocket and placed it into her palm. End quote. It's not about work. It's about this photograph, about your family, end quote. Tien looked down at the photo. The facial features of the couple were now vividly clear, thanks to Jack's painstaking restoration efforts. She let out a gasp of astonishment, covering her mouth with both hands. Jack continued, his voice trembling with emotion, end quote. For the past 2 months, Uncle Lamb, my partner, and I've been silently and frantically searching for the whereabouts of the man in this photo, based on the silver and Oppos, TT and Oppos, bracelet. I didn't dare tell you, because I was afraid. I was terrified that if it didn't and Oppos, pan out, you would have to cry again, having to endure that crushing disappointment just like when we met the elderly woman from Chaobang. But today, Uncle Lamb delivered the good news. We found him. His name is Tien, and he also lost his only daughter on a train over a decade ago, and spent the rest of his life searching for her in despair. He is very likely your biological father, Tien, end quote. Jack's words hit Tien like a powerful electric current racing through her body. She stood up abruptly, her entire frame shaking as the photograph slipped onto the grass. Her eyes widened, and hot tears instantly spilled over, streaming down her face. She could not believe her ears. Her father, the man she had yearned to meet just once in her life, the one she thought had been swallowed by the oblivion of time, had actually been alive and agonizingly searching for her all this time. Tien looked at Jack, at his eyes, dark-circled from countless sleepless nights, and at the boundless anxiety and love he held for her. She understood everything. His mysterious disappearances in the evenings, the vanishing savings. It was all for her. Tien dropped to her knees and threw her arms around Jack, sobbing uncontrollably as the choked cries from deep within her chest finally broke free. End quote. Jack, thank you. Thank you for everything. Why are you so foolish? Why did you carry everything all by yourself? I am so incredibly grateful to you, Jack. End quote. Jack held the girl tightly against his chest, soothing her trembling back. Amidst the vast expanse of the earth and sky, their two hearts beat as one, igniting a fierce flame of hope for the day of family reunion that was now so very close at hand. Unable to wait a single moment longer, at the very break of dawn the following day, while the first rays of sunlight had not yet dispelled the thick fog hovering over the red dirt roads, Jack started his pickup truck and set off with Tien toward the neighboring province. Throughout the journey of hundreds of kilometers, Tien did not utter a single word. Sitting in the passenger seat with her hands tightly intertwined, she stared blankly out the window. Her mind was a chaotic tangle of overwhelming joy and a vague, lingering fear. She was terrified that this might just be another dream, and that upon waking, she would still be nothing but an orphan with no family and no roots. Every now and then, Jack would reach over with one hand to grasp hers, giving it a gentle squeeze as a quiet reminder. I am right here. You have nothing to fear. After more than 4 hours of driving, Jack's truck turned into a narrow village lane shaded by cool rows of ivory bamboo. This was an ancient pottery village resting peacefully beside the gentle Lamb River. All around the village, rustic earthenware jars, pots, and vases were laid out, basking under the intense summer sun. Mr. Lamb was already waiting for them at the entrance of the village. Under Mr. Lamb and Oppo's guidance, the three of them walked deep into a small alley tucked behind an ancient longan grove, where a simple, single-story house stood with a weathered, moss-covered tiled roof. End quote. This is the place, end quote. Mr. Lamb stopped before a small bamboo gate, turning to look at Tien with an encouraging gaze. End quote. Tien is inside. You two go on in, end quote. Jack gently pushed the bamboo gate open, the rusty creak of its hinges piercing the silence of the small courtyard. In the corner of the yard, beside a manual pottery wheel, a middle-aged man was meticulously using his rough, mud-stained hands to shape a large clay vase. He dressed very simply, wearing a threadbare shirt faded by years of sun and wind. Hearing the noise, the man paused and slowly raised his head. The moment she saw his face, Tien stepped back in sheer shock, her heart hammering wildly. This man had entered the autumn of his life. His hair was more than half white, his face was deeply lined with hardship, and his eyes held a profound, distant sadness like a completely lifeless, still lake. Yet, every single line on that face, from the straight, high bridge of his nose to his broad forehead, was identical to the handsome, elegant man in youth photograph she carried inside her jacket pocket. The potter froze upon seeing Mr. Lamb, and then his gaze slowly drifted over to Jack before locking onto Tien's face. The very second he saw Tien, his mud-covered hands began to tremble violently, and the unformed clay vase on the wheel collapsed, shattering into fragments of wet earth. He bolted upright, his lips moving wordlessly, staring at Tien as if looking at a ghost returning from the past. Tien's face bore such an uncanny resemblance to his late wife in her youth that it practically took his breath away. "Va quoi? Tan? I found your daughter," end quote. Mr. Lamb stepped forward, his voice choking back tears as two streams of an old man in oppose. Tears rolled down his cheeks. The three of them stepped inside the simple, barren single-story house, which held no valuable assets except for old photographs of a little girl, prominently displayed on every wall. They sat around an old wooden table, and Jack carefully retrieved the restored photograph and the silver bracelet Tien always kept with her, placing them on the table. The moment his eyes fell upon the silver bracelet, the potter, Uncle Tien, buried his face in his hands and sobbed uncontrollably like a child. In a raspy, broken voice, he recounted the story of that fateful train ride years ago. The night he had fallen asleep only to wake up and find his 3-year-old daughter gone from the train carriage. He spoke of the years spent frantically searching for her, exhausting all his wealth, and the unbearable agony of his wife passing away from sheer heartbreak. Every detail, every timeline, and every memory shared by Uncle Tien perfectly aligned with what Tien had experienced at the orphanage. The correlation was so massive that it seemed to leave absolutely no room for doubt. Father and daughter looked at one another, the vast chasm of a 20-year separation seemingly being filled by their choked tears. However, Tien's life had been plagued by too many instances of false hope. Even though all the visual and spoken evidence was crystal clear, Jack made a wise proposition to ensure absolute certainty based on irrefutable science, so that no one would have to suffer heartbreak ever again. "Va quoi? Un so tan, tu tain." I know everything seems perfectly clear right now, but to ensure there is never a single doubt lingering in your hearts later on, I would like to take you both to the provincial hospital for a DNA test. This is the surest way for father and daughter to officially and legally reclaim each other before the law and your lineage, end quote. Jack said calmly. Uncle Tien nodded frantically, gripping Tien's hand, end quote. Yes, that's right. We must do a test. I don't want to be dreaming. I'm afraid this is just a beautiful dream of a crazy old man. My daughter, let's go do the test, end quote. The group immediately got into the truck and headed to the Provincial Central General Hospital. There, under the guidance of medical staff, samples of blood and oral swabs were collected from Uncle Tien and Tien to complete the father-child DNA paternity testing procedures. Once all formalities were wrapped up and the samples carefully sealed, the chief physician of the laboratory walked out holding a counterfoil. He looked at the three of them with a solemn, understanding, yet medically detached gaze. End quote. We have received the samples from both parties and sent them to the specialized analysis lab. The process of extracting and matching the genetic segments requires time to guarantee an absolute accuracy rate of 99.99%. The DNA test results will be available in exactly 3 days. For now, please take this appointment slip, head home, and wait patiently, end quote. 3 days. The number 3 might sound brief in the grand scheme of a lifetime. But to Tien right now, those 3 days felt agonizingly long, heavy and bleak, as if spanning 3 centuries. After driving Uncle Tom back to the pottery village so he could rest and prepare himself mentally, Jack and Tien returned to their farm. Throughout those 3 days of waiting, the atmosphere at the farm was consumed by an agonizing state of psychological tension. Tien could not focus on a single task. She went out to the field to cut grass, but her hands were so vacant that she nearly sliced her own fingers. She stood there trying to feed the parrot, but her mind wandered so far away that the feed spilled all over the floor. Invisible anxiety, restlessness, and dread completely dominated her thoughts without a single moment of reprieve. She dreaded the exact moment she would hold that test result paper in her hands. She asked herself hundreds, thousands of times, what if that piece of paper reads, and quote, no biological relationship, and quote. What if the probability of a match is 0%? What then? If this monumental hope collapsed, it would drag her entire spirit and the will to live she had maintained for so long down into a dark abyss. She feared she would no longer possess the courage to search for her family ever again. Watching his lover toss and turn all night without a wink of sleep, Jack's heart wrenched with profound sorrow. Each night, he would sit up, pull her into his arms, and let her rest her head against his firm chest. Using his warm hands, he gently stroked her hair, passing a sense of warmth and calm over to her. And quote, Tien, look at me, and quote. Jack gently lifted her chin under the late-night moonlight, his voice deep and steady like a lighthouse amidst a stormy night at sea. And quote, you cannot keep torturing yourself like this. I know you are terrified, but you must remember one thing. No matter what the DNA results turn out to be, whether he is your flesh and blood father or not, fate has already granted you two a beautiful bond. And most importantly, even if the whole world turns its back on you, I, Jack, will always be right here, standing by your side forever to protect, shelter, and be your family, the most solid anchor of your life. Whatever the outcome, I will bear it with you. End quote. Jack and Oppo's words and tight embrace served as the only sedative that allowed Tien to close her eyes for a few brief hours of sleep during those mentally turbulent days. She knew that no matter how cruel her past had been, her present and future were anchored by a man willing to sacrifice his very life to keep her safe. Relentless time ticked away, hour by agonizing hour, minute by breathless minute. And then, the fateful third day finally arrived. The morning sunlight of the appointment day filtered through the glass windows of the provincial hospital. Jack tightly gripped Tien's hand as he walked down the disinfectant-scented corridor alongside Uncle Tom and Mr. Lamb. Before them stood the door to the office of the chief physician, who would deliver the results. The doctor stepped out, holding a tightly sealed white envelope containing the answer to the fate and lives of 2 individuals who had suffered for 20 long years. He looked at everyone, let out a soft sigh, and prepared to tear open the seal. Will the DNA results hidden inside that envelope bring a true miracle of reunion for Tien after so many years of wandering, helping her reclaim her long-suffering biological father? Or does a cruel twist of fate, a complex new knot involving the mysterious group of strangers at the pottery village, await to swallow their happiness ahead? The storyline is growing increasingly dramatic, breathtaking, and full of unexpected mysteries. Can you guess what this DNA test result will be? Leave your thoughts in the comment section below. And Don and Oppo's, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, like and share the video today so you Don and Oppo's miss episode 3. The most explosive episode yet, decoding the entire truth about Tien's identity and Jack's breathless confrontation against dark forces. Thank you all for your wholehearted companionship and support for Tien and Jack's farm. See you all in the next episode.
Xin chào tất cả mọi người đã quay trở lại với kênh của mình. Nay thì mình đưa tới nội dung video về câu chuyện của Tử Tiên và Jack nha mọi người thân mến. Thì như mọi người cũng đã biết là Tử Tiên và Jack thì đã bên nhau khá là lâu rồi, và trong thời gian này thì tuyến câu chuyện đang đi theo hướng là tìm lại người thân cho Tử Tiên. Hôm bữa thì đã có hai bà cụ tới từ Cao Bằng, tưởng là đã tìm được người bà thất lạc của mình, tuy nhiên cuối cùng lại là không phải. Liệu rằng Tử Tiên có thể tìm được lại cha của mình và kết quả ADN sẽ như thế nào thì mời mọi người đón xem những tập tiếp theo ở trên kênh mình, cũng như là dự đoán xem là kết quả sẽ ra sao bằng cách để lại bình luận để chúng ta cùng thảo luận mọi người nhé. Đừng quên đăng ký kênh, bật chuông thông báo lên để không bỏ lỡ bất kỳ video nào. Và nếu như yêu quý kênh mình thì đừng tiếc một like, một share cho video này nhé. Tạm biệt mọi người, hẹn gặp lại.